Thank you, sir. Next speaker is Mr. M.G. Jayasahayam. He is a retired IAS officer. Welcome. Please.
Friends and my young students of IIT, I'm extremely happy to stand before you today because I was also briefly associated with this IIT some time ago in setting up your IIT Madras Research Park across the road from here. So I always consider IIT as the creme de creme, the best of the best. And I'm very happy today that you have spared time to listen to the voice of the suffering humanity. Eliran has put you through to the basics. He has given you an overview. He has virtually raised the curtain for us to take it further. I will take on from 2000, 2001 onwards, and I think Mr. Suresh will build on that, the current scenario. Now, why people like us got involved in that was we found that in Sri Lanka, pertaining to the Sri Lankan Tamils, there has been gross discrimination by the international community and the United Nations. I will just read out a small portion of what Kofi Annan spoke in April 2000 in the UN General Assembly. This is what he says: if humanitarian intervention, because that was, I'll tell you the background, because when war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide kind of things happen, and when nations who are against it, who are on the side of justice and peace, want to intervene, that bogey of sovereignty is raised. Sovereignty is a very vague kind of animal. Sovereignty. A small little country has got sovereignty. Big country has sovereignty. I can do anything within my territory. That is the concept of sovereignty, which is totally faulty sovereignty. Because of that faulty concept of sovereignty, lot of atrocities are taking place within countries by tribal chieftains, by dictators, all kind of leaders who have been trying to run the country. And with the result, what has happened was that international community could not intervene because of the hackneyed concept of sovereignty. So I am now describing this as to how the whole concept then got changed. Sovereignty is there as long as you are respecting human laws. You are respecting international law, you are respecting human rights, you are not committing these dastardly kind of acts. But the moment you start doing that, sovereignty goes away and gives place to responsibility to protect. It's a very interesting doctrine. Youngsters like you must know why all this noise is taking place today. So this is what Kofi Annan said. When there was argument, when there was large-scale genocide was going on in Rwanda between two tribes, more than 50,000 people were killed, up to 100,000 is estimated. Then in Srebrenica, that Bosnian War of 1995, where also thousands of people were died and all these atrocities took place. When this argument was going on, UN intervention and other kind of intervention discussion was going on, the argument was put forth, the sovereignty, you can't intervene. You can do anything we want. So this is what Kofi Annan says in utter frustration. If humanitarian intervention is indeed an unacceptable assault on sovereignty, how would we respond to a Rwanda, to a Srebrenica, to gross and systematic violation of human rights that offend every precept of our common humanity? He is talking about human rights. What has been happening here is gross genocide. Grossest, serious, most crimes against humanity. Now that they keep on talking about sovereignty. So what happened? This call by the UN Secretary General started a kind of initiative which was convened by Canada. Responsibility to protect. A commission was appointed, which was chaired by Gareth Evans, Australian Foreign Minister, and they came out with very clear-cut recommendations. in 2000. What they said? He says this report they gave was responsibility to protect in December 2001, and it was to be applied to mass atrocities, crimes like genocide, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. And this report was adopted by UN General Assembly with 150 members sitting in session, and that content was in the UN World Summit Outcome Document 2005, and it was reaffirmed by UN Security Council Resolution 1674. Why I am saying this? Responsibility to protect was recognized as part of the UN system. If certain things happen, what is that? So this commission lays down just threshold. What is the threshold? If crossing of which can attract responsibility to protect. Very nicely put. It says just threshold for military intervention. For military intervention, because I will tell you why I have been advocating out of some point of time military intervention by India. There's a reason for it. The just threshold for military intervention is large scale loss of life. I'm just quoting from the report. Large scale loss of life, actual or apprehended. Actual or apprehended, even apprehended large scale loss of life. With genocidal intent, which is the product of, which could be the product of deliberate state action or state neglect. It could even be neglect, not necessarily deliberate state action. It could even be state neglect. Or inability to act, or a failed state situation, or large-scale ethnic cleansing, actual or apprehended. Even apprehended ethnic cleansing is punishable. The responsibility to protect comes in. Whether carried out by killing, forced expulsion, acts of terror or rape. Now, this is what the UN system, UN mandate, UN charter says now. Article 24 of the UN Charter, UN Security Council has primary responsibility and can impose under this article, sanction, establish peacekeeping mission and authorize military action. Now, India is a signatory of the UN Charter 1948, Genocide Conventions and 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949, and therefore was bound to invoke action by UN Security Council. Why? In the normal circumstances, any country, when such war crimes takes place, such crimes against humanity takes place, such genocide takes place, any country can invoke the UN Security Council for bringing in this responsibility to protect doctrine into play. India, being a neighbor, was all the more responsible. All the more so, Sri Lankan Tamils are, we call it, India is the parents patriae, it's called, very interesting word, parents patriae. That means parents of his country. For the Tamils who live in Sri Lanka, we are the parents. Let's be very clear about it. The second concept. One is UN doctrine of R2P. Second is we are the parents of the Tamils in Sri Lanka. Originally, all the Tamils went from here. As a matter of fact, if God has not intervened, Sri Lanka would have been part of India, and it would have been part of Tamil Nadu. What do you call it? That Sri Lanka Tamil area, it would have been north and eastern territory would have been part. I don't want to go into that. That's a great historical and geographical kind of fact. Now, India should have, when all these things started, the war situation started, as it was going towards a major genocide, India should have invoked the UN Security Council. Please intervene. And UN Security Council has intervened at several places. Send in the military. You have seen it, I told you what has happened in Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia today is 4 countries. Even, you mentioned about a couple of other countries also. Recent is the Sudan. And what is the place in Vietnam?
East Timor. East Timor. That's Indonesia.
Indonesia?
East Timor.
East Timor, a small little place in East Timor was liberated like this. So many incidents are there. Because neighboring countries took interest. Here India not only did not invoke, it blocked. It blocked this art to responsibility to protect more by European countries, Scandinavian countries. It blocked. Why? That is the question people like us must ask. Blaming Sri Lanka, blaming Rajapaksa and company is not what Indians should do. What did India do? There I will take you through a brief, my own personal experience. I must now share it. I have written briefly about it, but let me share it now. People must know. In 2007, Rajapaksa was elected just a year earlier, and he was very uncomfortable. And India was very uncomfortable with him, and he was desperate for a solution in 2007. And India was not responding to his overtures. He sent his delegation to Delhi. Nobody bothered to meet them. In fact, they were snubbed for coming out with this stupid idea of power devolution of districts, all kind of things. That devolution also, who poisoned the mind of Rajapaksa was again India. Though he was in favor of devolving power to the states and establish a proper federal state, it was from India that the instigation went, don't do it. Devolve powers to the districts. So anyway, to cut the long story short, sometime in 2007, we were invited repeatedly. A small group from Tamil Nadu was invited by Rajapaksa himself. He wanted desperately to have a connection with Tamil Nadu civil society. Anyway, after a lot of preliminary deliberations and reluctance, we commenced the process. We started in 2007 and went on up to March 2008. Continuous meetings and 2 full-fledged meetings with the team of the president, including the president himself. And also we are also interacted with the politicians of TNA and others. And a workable solution was arrived at. And Rajapaksa gave us a clear understanding to us that he will merge. In spite of the Supreme Court order was a very technical matter. He told me very clearly, it's a very minor technical matter. I can resolve it by having a resolution in the parliament. Remerge north and east, and said he will also give 13 amendment plus. One of the committees had recommended. What is 13 amendment plus? I will tell you. 13th amendment is establishing provincial legislatures and devolving powers to the provinces like our states. But 13th amendment, the provinces do not have 2 very, very important powers. The revenue, the land administration powers and police. Both were with the central government, the federal government there. I mean, Rajapaksa government. Here, every state is the one who controls the land and controls the police. So they were willing, that is 13th amendment plus, they were willing, and accordingly we came back with an agreement sometime in 2008, and I wrote to the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary, Mr. T.K. Nair, who was my colleague, who were both in Chandigarh, we were good friends. I wrote to him very greatly detailed letter. A breakthrough has taken place. Will you please carry this forward and see that this miserable situation is brought to a resolution and problem is resolved. Instead of doing that, India turned against the Tamils. Completely other way around. Lot of conspiracy took place. The conspiracy took place right from Colombo, Delhi, Geneva and New York. I don't want to go into that in detail. And the entire table turned with the single purpose of destroying the Tamil community in Sri Lanka. Leave alone protecting them, destroying. Now, war 2008, war started intensifying. 2009, you all know what all happened. And it was extremely kind of situation which you can't even imagine. And now, some of you must have seen Channel 4. Channel 4, in my view, is only a small drop. If you see some of the material, the documentation that has been prepared, Channel 4, what you see is nothing compared to the one. That's when somebody asked me, have you seen Channel 4? He said, I have seen far, far worse. Immediately after 2009, not manufactured now. Whatever has happened after 2 years, no. Immediately after 2009, there was no time for people to manufacture anything. Genuine things were brought in. People came out of Sri Lanka, and we have seen those horrendous and horrid What is the bomb? Suresh?
Thermobaric.
Huh?
Thermobaric bomb.
Thermobaric bomb which was thrown. I mean, Mr. Suresh should be able to explain it, how horrendous it is and how this genocide took place. So what you see in Channel 4 is it's only a small portion of what actually happened. Yet India, now I am not a citizen of Sri Lanka. Though I can criticize Rajapakse, I cannot question him. But I have every right to question government of India. Why are they doing this? Even a barbarous nation will not do it. Now what happens then? War is over. Within about a week, a resolution is tabled in the UN, Human Rights Commission in Geneva. 18 countries from Europe and other countries support it. India throws it out in the dustbin, creates their own resolution and manipulates it, appreciating, patting on the back of Sri Lanka. And mind you, when this war was at its height, the entire operation of the intricate operation was by the Indian Army. Sri Lankan Army generals do not have this kind of strategic and tactical thing at all. I know it. I have been in the army before going to the IAS. I have been in the army. I have fought counterinsurgency operations in Nagaland. I know what is counterinsurgency. Sri Lankans have no experience at all. Indian army is very good in counterinsurgency. And Lieutenant General Satish Nambiar was a Lieutenant General in the Indian Army and he was advising the Sri Lankan Army. They had a beautiful network link. And National Security Advisor for India, he was, whatever that we are doing, now I will conclude the most important critical point. Now, they talk about national security. They said India did all this for the national security, to have our borders safe, because I have some knowledge in this. What actually they have done is, they have handed Sri Lanka to China. Basic common sense. President mentioned about Jawaharlal Nehru's policy and Indira Gandhi's policy. They were advised by professionals. They told them, listen, a strong Tamil presence in Sri Lanka is the best national security for India, for this part of the country. Because Tamil, though minority in population in Sri Lanka, they occupy 2/3 of Sri Lankan coastal belt, entire north and 2/3 of east. Okay, that is a strategic area from where you can control Indian Ocean. Today, Indian Ocean is highly strategic. 60-70% of Chinese trade takes place via that, and this eastern coast of Sri Lanka controls the Indian Ocean. If we had our Indians would Tamils would not have never raised against India. They would have never raised against India. They can't afford it because they can be exterminated in no time. What happened in the case of Rajiv Gandhi was an aberration. I don't want to go into that. Tragedy happened because IPK went there, indulged in a lot of other things. As a revenge, even Supreme Court has said it's a revenge action. Let's not go into it. National security is not confined to a few personalities. It is a larger issue. A strong Sri Lankan presence, whether a separate Ilam or a north-south merger, an autonomous state, with Tamils living in dignity, with relations with their people in India and Tamil Nadu, would be the biggest national security, the best national security India could ever have. Now what they have done? They have created a hostile Sri Lankan Tamil population. They have created a hostile Sinhalese population. They are not friendly with us. Now they are in the process of creating a very hostile Tamil population of Tamil Nadu. Look at the kind of uprising going on all over the place. Our young students who have been mild and meek so far, Tamil, I hope most of you understand Tamil. Sadhu Virandal, Kadu Valladu. Students have been sadhus for quite some time. Now for the first time they are coming onto the streets. Now this uprising will take place. So what is happening today is a kind of atmosphere which is extremely injurious to the national security of India. Now what India needs to do now? Mr. Suresh should be dealing on this, about what is happening in the UN. All this being talked about now is, there are two kinds of voices coming from the public. One is says support American resolution. One says no, go beyond the American resolution. Ask for a plebiscite, ask for a referendum, ask for ELO. This is not enough. Now, in my view, diplomatically speaking, I will conclude it after this point I made. Diplomatically speaking, the resolution brought by USA is good. Diplomatically, that's all that can be done. They have progressed from last March to this March. Last March, there was no mention about international law at all. This time, there is mention of international law. Last time, there was no mention of Navi Pillai, Secretary General of the Human Rights Commission. Her report, this thing, about holding an independent international inquiry, there was no mention. This time, the resolution takes note of that. It also says, on this recommendation of Navi Pillai, you observe the situation, give little more time to Sri Lanka, six more months. In October, November, you file the interim report of the compliance. Then, in the next March, you give a report as to what exactly these fellows have done on the LLRC and other kind of international recommendations. And I am sure, if they don't do anything, there will be a resolution for international independent investigation in the next March. That is the language of the American resolution as I see it. Because in the diplomatic circles, you got to move very cautiously. But the biggest bloc is India. India is the biggest bloc. They are not only not supporting them, they are opposing them. They are telling them. The problem is, most of these countries cannot ignore India. India is a huge market. In the market economy, Indian capacity to buy has gone up, and all these countries, most of these countries want to trade with India, almost everything under the sun, including arms, ammunition, weapons, the kind of scandal that is going on. So they cannot ignore India. Even if they do not take a proactive approach, at least they should not put blocks into this. But they are not doing it, they are blocking it. Now, because of these situations, the international opinion, all that is going on now, what India should do is, if it is really a humanitarian country, if it really respects justice, and if it really wants a solution to Sri Lankan problems, they must take certain steps, which I would mention from my perspective. Now, there is instability in Sri Lanka, there is instability in Tamil Nadu, and this is not good for national interest and national security. So that must be taken note of, number one. Now, what they should do is go for a political solution. The international investigation, let it go on. Political solution. Now, because they are not pursuing 13th Amendment pledge, they are not giving dignity to the people, now the demand has started for Iran. So you can't stop it. When the movement starts, the violence could come back again. Any kind of military or other presence is not going to control. So India today is in a very peculiar position that instead of following America, whatever America resolution has come, let them support it. But what people like us are asking for government of India is they must go several steps further. Initiate proactive. See, just saying that we are giving 1,000 crore rupees for building X number of houses, that has no meaning whatsoever. Proactive. They must initiate a discussion. Now, for instance, there is no dialogue at all. Government of India has never entered into any dialogue with the groups in Tamil Nadu. All that happened in 2009 was secret visits by National Security Advisor, secret visits by Foreign Minister, whispering. God alone knows what they whispered. There has never been an open dialogue with the people of Tamil Nadu. They must initiate it immediately. There must be a dialogue. Now also student uprising is taking place. What is the response of the state? Close down all the colleges. What is this? This is not a solution. It's like an ostrich shoving its head into the sand and says, the world is at peace. The world is not at peace at all. Because without justice, there can be no peace. In Tamil, it is very powerful. Neethi Indre, Amidi Illai. Today, there is no justice. So the problem is, I conclude with this, the problem is in India also there is no justice. Most of the areas you look at what is happening in India, the concept of justice has been buried fathoms deep. So when there is no injustice within your own country, how are you going to fight for justice in a neighboring country? And then, I have served in the north. Let me conclude with this remark. There is a great kind of divide is building up. People have started asking, is Tamil Nadu, does it really belong to India? Sitting in Delhi, these fellows don't seem to have any idea as to what is happening on the ground. They are floating. They think that just by manipulating some media, electronic media, they can get anything done. They are manipulating electronic media. The kind of debates that are going on, we are seeing it now. They will seek around for what is happening in Latin America, but they will not talk about what is happening in Sri Lanka. So with all this, I would like to conclude that as far as we are concerned, I would also advise the youngsters here. Instead of unnecessarily shouting and screaming at Rajapaksa and company, we must ask our own government, elected by us, to be on the side of justice and see that all these atrocities, people who have committed all these atrocities, war crimes and crimes against humanity and even genocide are brought to book on one side. They must be with the international community because that India can't do it alone. They must do it along with the international community. And separately, they must go full hog to evolve a full political situation to enable the Tamils of Sri Lanka to live with sense of justice and dignity. Thank you.